I have been asked to do a video on the Grand Conjunction in regard to Ascension, and also on how we enter the door of light. Just in case any of you watching this video haven't seen my little booklet on the door of light, it is available as a free download on my website, www.davidash.co. The first thing I'd like to say about the Grand Conjunction is, if you're expecting anything spectacular to happen on that day, I would warn you to let go of that expectation. In my experience, when we build up a lot of excitement about events on certain dates, they never come to pass on those dates, and we're just left disappointed. So if something does happen, let it happen. Otherwise, I would just treat it as a symbol, a significant event that signals the transition from the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. But certainly, I am expecting very, very significant events to be occurring in the next year or two to trigger off the transition from one age to the next. And I think it's highly likely that there will be a coronal mass ejection as a start to the ascension process. The ascension process, the transition into the fifth dimension, which people are expecting to occur during the Grand Conjunction, cannot occur whilst the world is as it is at the moment. People are too preoccupied with their communication devices, they're too preoccupied with their businesses, with their jobs, with their day-to-day concerns, their families, and it's impossible to bring about a shift such as we're expecting on the level of the ascension without something happening to quieten everybody down. And a coronal mass ejection will do just that. A coronal mass ejection is an ejection from the sun, and we were nearly hit by one in 2012, but it missed us by 9 days. But the last time we were hit by one was in 1921, and the time before that was 1859, the 1st and 2nd of September, which was called a Carrington event. And no harm was done to anyone or any living thing. It was a spectacular event that filled the sky with colour, with light. And the aurora was seen right the way down to the equator in both hemispheres. And there was continuous light for 24 hours. But this light was caused by an electric storm coming from the sun. And in those days, the only electric was telegraph and telephones, and these were severely disrupted by the storms. But now, in our modern civilization, which is totally dependent on electricity, a coronal mass ejection on a par with the Carrington event of 1859 would be absolutely disastrous. It would wipe out the internet, it would wipe out most satellites, and it would fry many of the transformers in the national grids of the world, disrupting the supply of electricity and causing a blackout that Harvard University said could last for up to 10 years before we're online again. It could cost $10 trillion to repair the damage. And one of the problems we're facing is that all money now is electronic transfers, and therefore, if the electronics of the world is wiped out, money goes with it as well. So there won't be a dollar, let alone 10 trillion. But the effect of a coronal mass ejection would be to quieten the world down. And the world would be ready for the ascension process to begin. Now, I would refer you to the Times on the 29th of September last, there was a two-page spread on a coronal mass ejection. And what they were saying in that article, the headliner, was, if you're concerned about the pandemic, well, prepare for the main event. And the thing is that the coronal mass ejection is really preparing us for what is to come. So, I can't be sure about anything I say. What I'm about to say is going to be in regard to the Ascension from information I've received from channelings. And so you have to exercise discrimination and bear what I have to say in mind and compare it with other sources of information that you have at your disposal. But the information I have is that there will be 3 waves of ascension. The first wave will be in spirit only and will be preceded by the opening of a door of light before everyone who is invited to participate. So who will be invited to participate in this first wave of ascension? The 3 criteria for ascension are: number 1, you have to know about ascension and consent to being ascended. You have to have an excitement in your heart, a longing to ascend. You have to give your consent because we're free will beings. Secondly, you have to be slightly over 50% in service to others, over being in service to yourself. And thirdly, you have to have some belief in the supernatural realms, in spiritual things, some level of belief in a superior force that is governing our lives, that is concerned for our well-being, otherwise known to many as God. The first wave of ascension will be mainly involving star seeds, that is, beings who've already ascended and have reincarnated into the human cycle of reincarnations, to be prepared at this time for this ascension process. So in a sense, the people involved in the first wave will be already pre-programmed for the ascension. If you're listening to this video, it's very likely that you will be involved in the first wave ascension. It's very likely you're a starseed. Otherwise, you wouldn't be interested in ascension. So, what happens when the doorway of light opens up before us? It will last for no more than a couple of minutes. And all we have to do is to go for the door of light in our minds, or if you like, step into it in our minds. Step into it, have no hesitation about entering the light. If we start to think about it, then it will fade away. So in a sense, this is where meditation comes in. This is where spiritual practice comes in, because it requires a high degree of faith and detachment from this world, a willingness to let go of everything and just give ourselves to the light. And in a sense, it will be easier for those who've been pre-programmed for this than people who haven't prepared. But it doesn't matter. It's a threefold process. It's not like an elitist process that only certain people will be involved in the ascension. No. If you like, the first wave are the ushers. They're the vanguard of the ascension process. And it is important, if you want to be involved in this first wave of ascension, that you are prepared to just go into the breath. If you like, you breathe into the light. You just surrender into the breath and let go of your thoughts, let go of your reservations, let go of fear, and just a sense of spontaneous joy and exaltation that, the light, the doorway of light at last. You just go for it. No hesitation. And you'll find yourself in a tunnel of light. The doorway of light itself is very bright, but you'll find yourself in a tunnel of light, and you pass through the tunnel of light, and you find there's another opening of light which is not so bright, and you pass through that opening, and you will find yourself in another world. It will be very similar to this world. There will be a landscape, there'll be grass, there'll be flowers, there'll be trees, but it will be a fifth dimensional world. And it will be very familiar to you, and the people that you meet in this world, you will know they'll be familiar to you, because this is the world you've come from, the fifth dimensional world in which you were an ascended master, that you've surrendered in order to be in the physical state, to help humanity come home. So the attitude to the first wave should not be one of, stop the earth, I want to get off, I want to get out of here. It shouldn't be that sort of attitude. Is not appropriate to the first wave. The attitude should be that you just want to serve humanity, that you recognize that your involvement in the first wave is vital. It's vital that there are sufficient people willing to let go and surrender to the light and let go of everything in order to be of service to the light and service to humanity. So we will be meeting and greeting our old friends, and there'll be a celebration which I like to call the party in the sky. Rest and recreation. And then we'll be getting together in conferences to get the strategy to plan the return so that we return as a coordinated assembly, as a group that everyone knows what they're doing. We come back into this world, we come back into our bodies. Our bodies will have been in a comatose state, a very deep sleep, if you like, for between 2 hours and 48 hours, which is actually the duration of a coronal mass ejection. And you don't have to worry about people missing you when you're gone. They won't miss you. Your body will be there, your body will be asleep, and people will be too caught up in the in the drama of the lights going out, of the internet not working, to be bothered about where you are, what's happening to you. But your body will be in a state of rapture, and this is what the rapture means. Nothing, no harm can come to it. It will be completely protected. And you come back into your body, and you come back with the powers of the Ascended Masters, with the powers that Christ had, with the powers that Sai Baba had. You will speak with conviction and power. You'll have power of healing. People will experience bliss, darshan, when they're in your presence. And it'll be a glorious and a wonderful experience. The 144,000 who go on this journey into the fifth dimension and return to their bodies. The bodies will be rejuvenated. You'll be returning to the age that you were at between your late 20s and early 30s. And you will have the powers to heal people instantly, to duplicate food and objects that people require using a super energy technology. It's a process that I explain in my book, Awaken. Everything I'm talking about now is explained in detail in my book. But you'll have the power to condense super energy, be working with a super energy operator in the fourth dimension. So be coming from the fifth dimension through the fourth dimension down to the third dimension. but you'll be coordinating, we'll all be assigned operators in the fourth dimension. And under our instruction, they will use like a laser-like beam, a technology where they will be able to beam super energy through a body of matter in this world when we instruct them to, which will enable the super energy, as it condenses through the atomic matrix of that body, will duplicate that body. So if it's food, the food will be duplicated. And this is the miracle that Yeshua performed, feeding of the 5,000. He called on his disciples to collect food from the 5,000, and they found 2 fishes and 5 loaves. And he instructed his super energy operator, in ancient times in Persia they were called genie, which means spirit, to condense super energy through the loaves and the fishes. And he did that by blessing them, you see. And they duplicated so that 5,000 people were fed. And there were 12 basketfuls left over. And I'm sitting here with the Christmas tree behind me because this is symbolic of this time, which is Christmas is for the Christians, but it's also the feast of Hanukkah for the Jewish people. And Hanukkah celebrates a miracle that happened when the Jewish temple was desecrated thousands of years ago. And the oil, all the oil was lost in the jars of oil were smashed that was needed to light the sanctuary lights for the rededication, reconsecration of the temple. And someone found just a small amount of oil in a jar that hadn't been broken. And miraculously, that oil was duplicated when they prayed over it, so that there was sufficient oil to light the sanctuary light for 9 days that was required to reconsecrate the temple. And this is celebrated in the Hanukkah feast, the 9 days of lighting candles at this time of year. And it's this technology of duplicating oil, duplicating food, that will be very important for the world, because you see, the whole of industry is dependent on electricity. And when the electricity is gone, all the supply chains will go, the whole of manufacturing industry will be gone. So supplies of things like toilet paper and toothpaste and all the other necessities of life will dry up. And so what we will be doing, instead of industry providing the daily needs that people have, we will be providing. Someone's got a tube of toothpaste, we duplicate it, and then everybody gets toothpaste. Toilet paper the same. And all the other necessities of life. And this is really an answer to the prayer of Extinction Rebellion, you see, because what is destroying the planet is not government or people, but it's corporations. The corporations are out of control. The corporations like Amazon and Google and Apple, these companies are, setting up for 5G technology, and they're also launching these shoebox-sized satellites. Thousands and thousands of them. They're setting up the whole grid around the Earth for 5G. And what damage this will do to insects. I mean, insects are really struggling with the 4G, the existing, internet electromagnetic pollution. But, 5G will increase this 100-fold. And nobody can stop these people because they've got the money to do it, and they don't answer to government. They're extra government, above government. So a coronal mass ejection will bring all of this to an end. But there will be great suffering on the earth if we are not prepared and ready to go into the light, to surrender to that door of light. That's why that request for me to speak about entering the door of light is so relevant. We need to pray, to prepare ourselves now through prayer to the Ascended Masters. That when the time comes that, that we do surrender, just, My prayer is, take me, Lord. When my time comes, when I'm invited, just grab me by whatever hair I've got on my head and yank me out of here, as it were, So when we come back into this world and we're working these miracles, we'll be feeding the people, and the people will listen to us. And we'll be speaking with conviction from an experience we've had of the higher dimensions. And we will know the existence of God with certainty. And as we feed the people, they will listen to us. And they will respond to our teaching. And also they will experience the power that's coming from us. We'll be emitting light. We'll be luminous beings. And we'll fill them with joy just by our very presence. And as we start our work going from town to town, village to village, 144,000 of us working in the world, we'll be coordinating the return of people to the land. We'll be coordinating farms so that people can move from the towns and the cities onto farms. And each farm will have a residual ascended master who'll be acting a bit like Amma. The farms would be like ashrams. And there'll be thousands of people coming to each farm and will be taken care of by that ascended master. They'll be taught by that ascended master. And all their needs will be met by the duplication technologies. And we'll get the electric going again in that regional space. So instead of electricity being duplicated, distributed, through the national grid, it will be locally available in each of these ashrams. And as those people are prepared, and they'll be introduced to service so that they can prepare for the ascension, they'll receive the meditation, the instructions that they need to prepare them for ascension. And just the darshan of the ascended master will lift their frequency, lift their energy to a state where they're ready for ascension. And then in the second wave, all those that are prepared will be taken not just in spirit, but in body as well. And it may be, you see, that it won't even be necessary for people to leave the planet. It may be using this resonance technology. It's a super energy resonance where a beam of super energy, fifth dimensional energy, will be placed over the entire light center and take the entire center with all the people there out of space-time at the time of the second wave. So they're still on the earth, but they are out of the physical space and time. And then the third wave will be more of an evacuation than an ascension. The third wave will be for children and innocents and any people on the earth who are not prepared yet to go through the ascension, but really are also not ready to go through the death process and not deserving of the death process. People who are, prepared to listen, prepared to take the leap, who are prepared to undergo evacuation. And these people will be lifted physically out of space and time and taken into a holding space in a biosatellite. So these are the three processes. The first wave is spirit only, but the second and the third waves are physical as well. And at the time of the third wave, those of us that left in spirit only but are back in our ascended bodies, in our bodies, that's when our bodies will go through the ascension. I meant regenerated bodies, but that's when our bodies will be ascended, when we will actually leave the earth, step out of space and time. And at that time, it'll be about a quarter of an hour after the third wave is taken, the earth will undergo cleansing. This cleansing will be either a pole shift in which the crust of the earth slips over the poles, and the earthquakes associated with this huge pole shift will be sufficient to destroy most of the civilization on the surface of the earth. And again, I describe this in both my books, in the Awakened book and also in the Door of Light. I speak about this pole shift. But also there is another event that is very likely to occur at that time, and that is a full Samvartika. Now, a coronal mass ejection, the first wave coronal mass ejection, will be a cold event. In other words, it's just simply an electrical storm coming from the Earth, but no heat and no fire. However, and that happens on a frequency of about once a century. However, once every 10 or 20,000 years, this is very rare, the energy released from the sun is so great that the inner planets get scorched. And a river of fire comes across through space from the sun. As well as the electrical energy, the fire, the heat comes across and scorches the surface of the earth. And this is a Samvartika in the Hindu scripts. And the last Samvartika, which tens of thousands of years ago, was preceded by the appearance of luminous seraphic beings, the seraphim. They were human, but they were seraphim and they were luminous, preparing the population at that time for ascension. So this process has happened before, and it happens on a 26,000-year cycle. But again, the fire is necessary at this time. The cleansing of the earth by fire, which was predicted at Garabandal. You can go online and check out all about the apparitions of Garabandal, Marian apparitions. But this cleansing of the earth by fire is necessary to clear all the pollution of plastic and to cleanse the space around the earth of these satellites, and to really clean up the civilization so that the earth is ready for the next age to come. But anything that's worth keeping from this civilization can be taken out of space and time. You never know, we may decide to save St. Paul's Cathedral or Salisbury Cathedral or something. We can do that. If we decide as Ascended Masters there's some beautiful things to be kept for the future, we can take them out of space-time. So as the earth goes through cleansing and transition. And also animals, whales, dolphins, endangered species, zebras, rhinos, all these natural organisms can also be protected. We can take them out of space-time, or you can take the jungle and take that jungle with the species within it. But it's more likely that we'll actually take these entities out of space-time, because it's promised that at this time the earth will be cleansed of parasites and disease organisms. And that is what a Samvartika will do. So it'll be a selective process. I think that we'll make sure that that only the species that are for the new age pass through this transition. So I hope that makes it clear how I perceive this process unfolding. There's nothing to fear. The earth does need to be cleansed. We are going to be taken care of, but everything depends on the preparedness of this core group of people, which may very well include you, to surrender to the light, to surrender to the door of light without hesitation, so that we can come back and prepare the rest of humanity for their ascension. And things are going far better in this world than was ever expected. I mean, we read about dreadful things and disasters in the news, but the bulk of humanity are in an incredibly prepared state for this transition. Most people are really ready. There's been an exponential growth in loving kindness, in consideration and care, in parenting, the quality and standard of parenting, and just in the general spiritual consciousness and awareness of humanity. I mean, it's never been better on the planet. We've never been more prepared. And every single human being is infinitely precious to the divine, is loved beyond anything we could comprehend. Everyone is priceless. I think the vast majority of humanity are going to make it through the Ascension. I'm very excited about what's going to be happening and about what's coming. So I wish you well, and I hope this video has been instructive and helpful to you, and hopefully we'll meet merrily on the Ascension. Namaste.